and encouraged of where so many of you are at, because I get it. Life right now at your age, it's not all just simplicity. And truthfully, like, there's no Calvary coming. Like that motivation, that mojo, that internal fire, that thing that pushes you. Like if you're dependent upon everybody else to spark that for you, like, I get it. I know sometimes that we can bring in a communicator, or maybe you listen to a podcast, or there's somebody in your life that you kind of can feed off of. But here's the problem with motivation. It takes motion. It takes movement. It's outside of you. You've got to find that internal fire, that internal passion, that thing that when you talk about it, there's an impulse because you want to go after it. And I don't care what it is. And it can change time and time again. I didn't know that I was going to become a communicator. I really didn't. In 2010 and 11, when I put Change the World on the wall, I just knew I wanted to try to make a difference. And then as I kept taking the next right step towards that passion of mine, it began to kind of shape and to form, and it became to crystallize. And then I began to realize that I could communicate and use the English language to articulate a message that may move somebody's heart to make a decision of change. But I didn't always know that. And for some of you, what I want you to do is throw something on a wall. Every time I see you, I say the same thing because I think we overcomplicate it. It's the power of the choice. It's the power of using the people around you and not being afraid of failing, but being afraid of not trying. And maybe your dream's big, good, go after it. And maybe you don't make it because it was way out there, but you pursued it, and maybe there was something that happened that you didn't quite get there. But I promise you this, if you shoot for a star and you're all in with your effort and your heart and your attitude and your energy and your commitment, you may not land on that star, but I can guarantee you, you'll land on the moon. And the truth is, you're still in space. So some of you will walk through this door, and we're coming to the end of a school year. And my closest mentor, he always told me this. Him and his wife, I love them so much. They say, Nathan, we end well so we can begin well. And every single one of you, you're a one of one. But some of you have got to begin to throw that thing against the wall. And some of you just got to begin to believe. And no one's told you today, and maybe you've been worn down. Don't lose your voice. Hear me. Don't lose the ability to know that you are a critical thinker. You have the ability to process, to think, to rationalize, to hear data, and to make conclusions. It's inside of you. Don't settle for anything less than real and authentic. Some of you are compromising who you are because you want to fit into a narrative. You want to fit into a group, into a crowd, into a clique of people. But when you look in the mirror, that's not who you really are. But you're afraid to make the choice and the change and to make real life choices that you know will activate the thing inside of that you're passionate about. So I'm just some random dude that happens to be from Indiana too. That genuinely, when I look at every single one of you, I will affirm I know your life has been challenging. And I bet many of you come from broken families, and many of you come from unhealthy environments at times and places in your story, and things haven't been easy. But you're not a product of those, man. You're a product of what you do. And you can control every space and place that your life goes from this point on. Quit letting things live rent-free in your head. I had to let my things go with my father, and I was bitter and I was angry, but I realized that I was allowing my frustration and my anger towards him to live rent-free in my head. And I didn't want to forgive him, though, because I thought if I forgave him, it would justify what he did to me. But truthfully, if a family could face and be uncomfortable in a place and forgive me for the loss of their daughter, how could I not begin to let some other things go and find the courage to feel uncomfortable too? And so I began to realize that when I was forgiving and I learned that if I zoomed out and if I could look at my dad and realize that he didn't do things when I was a kid to destroy or to hurt me, He had his own story, his own struggle, his own battle. And I began to have actually empathy and understanding a little bit. But because I wouldn't forgive, it consumed me, it exhausted me. I let it live rent-free in my head. And truthfully, I knew my dad didn't do it on purpose because it wasn't consuming him. And so when I let go, I didn't justify it, but it allowed me to continue to realize like it's okay for people to make mistakes. But I can't let that deter me anymore from paralyzing me, chasing down that impulse inside of me. And when I forgave, I had to forgive without expectations, because just because I forgave, it didn't mean that he was going to respond the way that I hoped he would in my head. Again, I wasn't forgiven for any other reason than the fact that I knew it was going to let me begin to really lock on that thing that I'm passionate about inside. That's why, again, I just encourage you guys as you finish this school year, don't be afraid. But don't just stay on autopilot